So here's the summary. We want to use a database. To use a database with Go, we go to a SQL database, right? We go to package SQL. When we get to package SQL, we realize we need a database driver. So we go and we open up this list of database drivers. And we see that we find the drivers for the database we want to use. Here we have a couple options for Postgres. I'm going to go with this one, so I click on that. It brings me here. I scroll through all this code. This is the code for the Postgres driver. I go get that to get it right down on my computer so I could use it. And it says to read about it, go here. So I read about it by coming here. There's some examples. And I quickly realize I need to do a connection string. Right? Well, first thing is this chunk of code where we're initializing with the blank identifier, we're initializing a dependency. But we're not going to use any of the code ourselves in our code. We just need it to do some setup. So that's what the blank identifier does when you see it in an import. And then down here we realize we need a connection string. And we're kind of curious what's the difference between that connection string and this connection string. So we start reading about it, and then we say, let's go here and read about it. And this actually takes us to Postgres documentation, where it tells us about how you connect to Postgres with a connection string. Sweet. And then we have a keyword connection or a connection URI, which is each of these two options that we saw. There's the connection URI and the connection keyword value. And so we're kind of like, all right, well, let's try the keyword value. And then once we've connected, we're going to pass our connection to our SQL Open. And SQL Open asks us to give it the driver name. I have no idea where we got the driver name is Postgres, right? Does that come from the documentation? Like maybe driver name, right? Like, you know, this is all for the connection string. Like, where's the driver name Postgres? Can the driver name be anything I want? Doesn't matter. You know, like if I look here, I'm going to look for driver name, nothing. I'm going to look for name. And we've got that kind of, there's a lot of name stuff actually. What about if there's a space before it? Now we're only down to 28. So, and driver, is there anything? Yeah, there's a fair amount for driver, but nothing for driver name. This is all the Postgres. So, I'm not sure where they got, right? Like the driver name is Postgres. And if we look at that SQL deal, opens a database specified by its database driver name. Like I'm not sure where we determined the driver name. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen this code, but this is a function, has two parameters, and they're both of type string. So when they're the same type, you could omit the type on preceding ones, right? So this and this are both string. And so it's just added string there, okay? Just making sure that's clear. So driver name here, I could search for driver, and there's nothing. I could search for name, and there's 16. It's quite a few. No, there's 76. That's a lot. So we're not going to go through that. Here, DB name is MyDB, but again, we'll experiment with that. So that's a little bit of a review of what we learned so far, right? We get our connection string. We use SQL Open. We give it the database name. Is that what it's called, or driver name? We give it the driver name, and then we give it our connection string, and then we defer the DB close, and then we could ping it, and we could say, hey, we're connected. So we did this already with this code, and it worked. And to do all that, by the way, we had to create a user and a password. And so to create a user and a password, right, we created a database, we created a user, and then we granted all the privileges on a certain database to that user so that we could then log in as that user. Welcome to like the digital kingdom or whatever, where they have their own rules of passage, right? With the right things, you can you can pass through certain passageways. So that's what we've done so far. Did that review help? A little bit?